Oh, what have I done? What have I done? Okay, there's no easy way to do this. Let me just pull the tooth. I have picked Kentucky to lose football games before, and I've been right. It's just really hard to remember when it happened. So the Apology Tour version 2022 is going to start here. Colin, just keep it on the key shot. I didn't tell you I was going to do this because I didn't tell anyone I was going to do this. But every now and then, I've got to give you the most regrettable photo op that I know to give you. But I deserve it. So here we go. I doubted Mark Stoops. I doubted Kentucky. And I've got to apologize to him. And if you're listening on podcast, don't worry. A screenshot of this will have long since circulated for you to see on social media by the time you're listening to this. Here we go. 3-second pause. Okay. I apologize to Mark Stoops. I doubted his program. I doubted the team's ability to go in here. I thought if they did, it would require some things to go their way. Now, in fairness, things did go their way, but that's called football. That's why we watch the games. That's why we play them. Kentucky fans have been very mouthy in my mentions, but they should be. I haven't snapped back at a single one of you because you're right. You're right. You went in there, again, like you seemingly do every year, and you beat Florida, and you may very well be in control for that number 2 spot in the East, and you've got Georgia coming to your building way late in the year, and we'll just see how that turns out. But the blueprint for Kentucky to win this game, if you'll go back to the Tuesday show and the Thursday show, needed a couple of dominoes to fall. We needed Will Levis to be the better quarterback in the game, and boy, he was, and he didn't even need to put up all SEC numbers to do it. More on that in a second. And they probably needed to pop a special teams play or win the turnover battle. They did all of those things. So Kentucky still didn't run it very well. They ran it under. In fact, they had a worse yards per carry average than they did against Miami, Ohio. They ran 1.8 yards per carry to Florida's 4.5. But man, Will Levis, when he needed to, stepped up, threw it 202 yards, 1 touchdown. Like I said, not astronomical numbers, not Heisman numbers, but given the way the game flowed and played out, they were good enough numbers. This is why when we went back to week 1 and we watched Florida beat Utah, we didn't bump Florida up over Utah. We didn't bump Florida up as high as the AP did. And it was because we try and walk the line of being impressed with guys like Anthony Richardson in week 1, observing that performance he had, but not drawing conclusions. It's hard to do. I can't even resist it sometimes. But if you were hesitant, then you were validated in week 2. Now, Florida fans should be happy to be 1-1. If I asked you in August, you'd take 1-1 right now. But once you got to 1-0, no, because that just means you're going to go 0-1 the next week. But man, it was jarring to watch Anthony Richardson's performance last night. I was on the flight back from Austin, so I watched a majority of this game in midair, which, as you know, is an uncomfortable position if you're a talker, because you can't make any sounds, and be socially acceptable on the plane. I couldn't believe it. I mean, there was a player, I think for the Dodgers back in the day, Steve Sachs, who just got the yips. Couldn't throw the ball accurately. And I'm not saying we entered Steve Sachs, Chuck Knobloch territory last night, but Anthony Richardson had no clue where the ball was going at times. Can you imagine being that way in your backyard, much less in front of 90,000 folks? And they're still in the game, kind of, but Kentucky ended up controlling it most of the way. Richardson was 14 of 35. No touchdowns, threw 2 picks. He was a non-factor running. Just seemingly a totally different player. Okay, his stat line totally different than week 1. Florida, as a result, 4 of 16 on 3rd down. Probably the padlock stat. If you would have known that Friday, you would have known, ooh, man, unless they probably score 14 to 17 non-offensive points, it's going Kentucky's way this evening. Is this a flaw, or is it something that they can coach around? See, because I look at Kentucky, one of the best hallmarks of a great coaching staff is being able to coach around flaws. Every team's got them. Some teams succumb to them, and then the really, really great staffs, they don't sink because of their flaws because they can coach around them. See, a lot of coaching staffs can coach to their strengths. The great ones can coach around their flaws. Mark Stoops, they couldn't run the ball. They cannot run the ball so far this year. They're 2-0 because he's been able to coach and scheme around their flaws. They play complementary football. They score defensively. Special teams last night actually bit them, but in general, that's a really good program in all 3 phases, and they They're not flashy, but in the end, when they've got more points on the board than the other team, you look and you say, he did it again. How did he do it again? And then you see me end up holding up signs like this. I am sorry, Mark Stoops. I am very sorry. You noticed I put hugs and kisses on there. I think that kind of thing resonates with Mark Stoops. I don't want to look ahead too much, but let's look ahead, because we're irresponsible around here. So let's look ahead. Kentucky plays Youngstown, and then they play Northern Illinois. I expect them to win both those games, at which point they will be 4-0. And do you know who they play in Week 5, friends? They play Ole Miss, and Ole Miss will probably also be undefeated. The Every Given Saturday tour, and myself in general, I have never been to a game at Ole Miss. Somehow I've never been there. I've driven through Oxford, been on campus when the football game's not happening, but just keep that in mind. Just write that in pencil somewhere. Kentucky is in an interesting spot right now because, like I said, if you can't run the ball and you don't have Bryce Young as your quarterback or you don't have that kind of performance, it's hard to win all the games you play, but think about the language we're using. Think about the rarefied air we're talking about Kentucky football in. If I'm looking right now, I never pay attention to the AP. AP's got them top 10. There's Kentucky football, a football school, football and basketball. Kentucky football sitting there in the top 10. And we're talking about them in the same vein that we would talk about Florida, that we would talk about Tennessee. It took until yesterday, guys, for someone to pass Bear Bryant in the all-time program wins list. There are people watching this show right now who are totally unaware that Bear Bryant ever coached at Kentucky. You know him for the, 15, 20 some odd years he coached at Alabama, which you should. He was at Kentucky. He was at A&M and Kentucky before that. It's been that long. A guy that a lot of you aren't even aware coached in Kentucky held the all-time program wins record until yesterday when Mark Stoops finally broke it. My point there is not disparaging in any way. It's actually complimentary because that's the lineage of the program, and yet now they've inserted themselves into the same kind of conversations you have about historical powerhouse programs. Tennessee, although it may be hard to believe if you're 18 years old, has historically been a powerhouse. Florida, historically, they've been a powerhouse. Kentucky's in the language. They're in the conversations. And so hats off to Mark Stoops. Florida plays USF this week, and then they go to Tennessee, okay? The game at Tennessee in 2 weeks is going to be an all-out knife fight. I don't care that Florida just lost a game. It's going to be an all-out knife fight. It's going to be about as bright a spotlight that's been on that game in a few years, and I'm very much looking forward to that one. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure and leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.